Tom, we'd like to start with some questions about your childhood.
Sure, mate.
Where did you grow up?
I was in Tipperary town all my life. So I was born in a part of the town called Glenview Square for 2 years. And we moved from there then to another part of the town, Father Matthew Street. And then, about 30 years ago, I moved in here to St. Michael Street.
And what games did you play at school, at home, or on the streets?
Well, they were very, very simple games. Back in the 30s, mid-30s, we used to play, we used to get a sort of spinning with timber with a point on it. It was into a spinner, and you spin it with your hand, and you had a stick with twine, and you'd hit it, and it would spin, and you could spin it up and down the road. And of course, at that time, you might see a motor car once an hour or even less, because there was no traffic on the roads. But that was a very popular one. And some others would have a little wheel and they hit it and go along the street. But the other ones, of course, were very popular, and they came from films, the cowboys and Indians. We used to play those, and if you were shot, you had to lie down and not get up until you were told. But that occupied a lot of our times. And more times we'd even go up the fields and look for ditches where you find bees and wasps and things like that, and have a jar and put them in. And you let them off afterwards. But so we made our own games and our own fun.
And what would you do on winter nights when it might be raining and cold?
Well, in our house there was only one main fire, which was in the kitchen, and we sat around the fire, and we talked. I read a lot, and we talked about the day. And at that time there were no radios, no television of course, and radio did come later on, and this was great because we could listen to radio programs and music programs and so on. So, but we filled in the time ourselves.
Yeah. And did you have running water or electricity in your house?
Certainly there was no electricity. Running water, yes. And we had to use oil lamps and candles. So if you're going to bed, you'd have to take your candle to bed. And I can tell you the houses at that time were very, very cold. In fact, the frost used to be so severe that it used to be glistening on the walls of the house. Now the house was made of stone and brick. Still, there was no insulation as you know today. So it was a very hard time, and even the beds, you'd have to put extra clothes or throw a heavy coat on the bed. It was that bad.
And were jobs like, would there be many jobs going?
No, jobs like now, they were very, very scarce in the 30s and 40s, and very few altogether. What was happening in the 30s even, in the 40s, they were immigrating, going to England to work. And they went to Liverpool and London, places like that. And more of them would go to Scotland during the summertime. But in the town here, there was quite a lot of emigration. Young people that had to get work somewhere. And the town was, at that time, was very badly off, really poor. Some of the streets here, the houses were very, very badly built, and there was no heating, as I said. But it was a hard life, a hard existence, a lot of poverty, and abject poverty even. And in fact, we'll be coming to it later on, Canon Hayes, Father Hayes, was a curate in the town, and he, in order to do something for people that were hungry, and they weren't literally hungry, he started a scheme called penny dinners. And what he meant by that was there was a building in the town where there was a kitchen, which was an office as a club, the army that was here in the 20s. And they used to cook the meals there. The people would come up with little tin cans or receptacles and take the food with them, bring it home to give it to their families. Now it was that bad. They were hungry. And I know going to school here, I went to school in this school, and a lot of the kids in winter time and summertime had no shoes. They were barefooted and they were cold and our clothing was threadbare. So they were very difficult times when I was growing up, and I was in great poverty. But we survived, and there was a great difference between people that had money and people that hadn't money. The professional people like doctors and solicitors, they were very well off, but then you had the lower. There was no middle class really. The rest of them were just poor people.
Yeah. Do you remember rationing?
Of course I do. They were during the war years. The war started in 1939 and finished in 1945. Yeah. And I can recall, I'm talking about again about this building. I was in the classroom next door to me here. This room was all one big room one time, and the classroom was there. But the war started in 1939 through September. Well, the rumours of war were going to start anywhere, but the teacher that was teaching me in fourth class at the time, Big Henry, he knew more about the war and the threatened war that was going to come. And he signalled. He said goodbye to us all. He said, "I'll see us again." But the war started in September 1939. I can still recall everybody talking about it. And but then the rationing started. And that was a difficult time. There was only so much tea you could get, and that was rationed out. When the tea ran out, you had to wait for it and just drank milk and so on. Food was a no variety of food. So a lot of food had to be cooked at home. So my mother used to cook brown bread and white bread, and she made very nice scones and cakes. But that was it. The diet we had was very, very plain, simple food, but healthy food. And everybody would get obese as a result of it.
Do you remember market fairs?
Indeed I do. They were atrocious. They used in the main street now, they used to have all they had a lot of barricades put up along the shop fronts. Yeah. And the farmers would come in with their cattle and they'd fill up the whole street. The whole main street would be full of cattle, and you couldn't get down, and they used to have sticks under their arms, and if you wasn't careful, you would poke at the stick. And they were very rough people, these farmers, and they were nice people. That's what they were doing their own business anyway. But it was well, of course, the shopkeepers would benefit from the business on the street and the drink and so on. So everybody in Colombo. But a lot of washing up had to be done afterwards with hoses that cleaned down the shops.
And where did you go to school?
Well, I started here, as I told you, and this is important to me. I'm still here. I started in babies here, and I look around the whole way, and I like school here, and I like the teachers, they were kind, and the people I've mentioned already, Bill Hammerhead, Michael Flynn, was living next door here. His family was still here, Flynn, the solicitors, but he was teaching here as a headmaster. And the other side of the building, which was a girls' school, his wife was teaching there. So they had a big family, and I got to know them, of course, very well.
And how did you, and can you remember your first community day?
I can, actually I can. I can, because all I can remember is coming back and I had my hands like that, and the mystique was taking me over, the mystique of this wonderful thing that was happening today. So I can remember that.
And can you talk about, for a bit, about Candies and Monastery was about? What Monastery was about?
Well, winter is an Irish word, and it's hard to find an English translation for it. The Latin part would be monastery, coming from monastery, and winterers is again, it's a hard thing. It means the people of Ireland, the communities of Ireland. Winter and Tira would be the people of the families of the land, Tira. So, but that's where that came from. And Father Hayes was born in 1875, yes, in Maroon, in County Limerick. And they had a farm there in Moher, in Maroon. And the land war was in full swing, and they weren't paying their rents to the landlord. And they were evicted. They were living in what they call the Cloncarty estate. They were evicted from their homes, and they had to live in a land league hut provided by the land league, and they thought they'd be there for a year or two, but they were there for 12 years. And the family was very big. And I think about six of them died in that land league of malnutrition and diphtheria disease. And so they had a terrible existence. Anybody who were beaten, they had to go back to their farms, and their farms would run down, and they had to start all over again. But that's where he got this love of country. And then he went on then to school to the Jesuits in Limerick, and that's where he got his education, and then he became a priest. And he went to Paris to be ordained. He lived in Paris for about a year in the Irish College there, and then he came back to Ireland, and then he was sent over to Liverpool to work amongst the Irish immigrants that were there. And he got to know them and their problems, and the problems that Ireland had. And we have the same thing today again. It's happening all over again, that people are immigrating because there was no jobs. But he convinced us of the war then was recalled eventually back to Ireland, and he went up to Castleknock where he was cured, and eventually came to Tipperary in 1934, and he was here until 1946 when he moved to Banff. So in 1937 he founded Winton Theatre. And the first unit of Winton Theatre was in this town. That's the very first. And it's still working. We're still here under the same banner. It's still here. So then his idea was that people would form a kind of parish parliament, he called it a guild. And all the people in say Tipperary would appoint representatives. So he divided them into vocations: farmers, business people, women, and youth. And there would be about 20 of those people then would form what he called the parish council. And that parish council then had a look at what was needed in the town and the area to identify what was needed urgently. It could be not in cases it was jobs, of course. There were no social services there. Poverty had to be tackled as well. So the people identified these things, and then they met as a kind of a parish parliament, and they decided what were the priorities and how they could raise money to address some of the problems. And that's the base of Winton Theatre. It's self-reliance on the people themselves, and to get involved in their own development. That's the whole kernel, and the involvement of people in their own development, whether it's cultural development, economic development, social development, environmental development, all that is taken in by Winton Theatre. And it's the only national community development organisation in the country, because we have hundreds of branches, and in recent times we've extended that to the crime prevention. You might have seen community alerting signs around the country. All that's part of the addressing problems that have been identified by the people themselves.
Did Canon Hayes visit homes and farms?
He did. Well, Father Hayes was known nationally and internationally. Yeah, and he was a social reformer of the greatest order, and he was a tremendous orator. He was a great talker. He could convince people of the need for them to get involved in their own welfare and development. And he travelled to other countries as well. It was in 1934 he was invited to go to Buenos Aires, where the Pope Francis, yes, and he preached a series of lectures in Buenos Aires for the University of Congress in 1934. And then he was going to Rome, over to England, lots of places like that. Yeah. So he was now again there wasn't at that time there wasn't any much radio. He is RT had some recordings of him, all right. The one that comes to mind right away is that when he turned on electricity for the first time in 1947 in Banshee. It records what he said. I think he said, like, here goes in the name of God, and the electricity was turned on in Banshee for the people of Banshee. Because up to then there was no electricity in the rural parts until the rural electrification was set up in about 1946 and so on. So it's Winslet here deals with every aspect of people's lives, every aspect of people's lives.
And could you tell us about his final years?
His final years.
Yeah, his final years in his business.
Well, he left, as I said, Tipperary in 1946 to move to Banshee. He was there until 1957. But he got, you see, he wore himself out, wore himself out working with people, and he wasn't taking care of his health. And he was a very emotional man too, and because he was so sincere. Now, I spent 10 years with him traveling around the country. In his car, I was drive for him to his secretary, and I could write another book on the experiences we had around the country. He's going to meetings, and all these meetings were very big because he was very well known. In fact, in Kildare, one meeting was going to, Kildare is a big town, and we had to cross from where we were to where the hall was, and it meant to be crossing the main Dublin Cork Road. But all the traffic was stopped, and there was a big procession with Father Hayes to take him down to the hall where he was meeting all the people. He was that famous, he would stop all the traffic. so that there was, and in basically he went, of course, yes, people flocked to see him. He was not like the Pope, but he was a great figure and a very kind man. He was terribly interested in young people, terribly interested. Even when he was in England when we were told, he had bands where young people played music. So to have worked with him was a great privilege. To have known him was a great privilege. And he was, above all, to me, he was very, very sincere man. But he died eventually, of course. He got a hemorrhage, and it happened that it was a duodenal ulcer he had, and it was inoperable. And he was operated on here in Tipperary in the nursing home. He went to Dublin to Vincent's to be operated, and they wouldn't do the job. They wouldn't operate. They felt that he wouldn't survive the operation. And then he came back here, and there was a famous doctor in Cashel called Hogan, Surgeon Hogan, and he did the operation here in Tipperary, Hogan's nursing home, and it was a great success. And he came back from that to bed, and the doctors told me it was a tremendous success. He did a bypass of his stomach, but the shock of the operation, he had also gallstones, which they had to remove. The shock of the operation was too great. His kidneys collapsed, and that time there was no way of restoring, and there were no machines to circulate the blood. He died from urine poisoning, which was a very hard death because he had convulsions. But anyway, he struggled for a few days, but he eventually died. I was present at his death. And there was a strange thing happened too. I was at the end of the bed, and there was the nurse was there. There was one member of his family, brother and sister, were there. But when suddenly died, I was at the end of the bed, and I saw a shadow, and the shadow came up along, stick like that. And right when it got to the top of his head, he stopped breathing. Now I thought I had never seen anyone die before, so I said, this is usual, but I made inquiries. Nobody in the room saw it. I don't know what saw it. So I don't know what it was, but it could be his soul leaving his body.
And was the funeral a big funeral?
It certainly was. My goodness, everybody in the country from the Taoiseach down, and everybody came to the funeral. Yes, the funeral was in the nursing home. They went out a bench, and the band came out to the outskirts of the town, and then parted. You can do the bench, and the next day, then the funeral was in Banshire, and it was the 1st of February. Was that year, and it was a very wet, very windy day, hailstones. I don't know what it was, but all the dignitaries in the country were there, and everybody I could think of, and there were photographs available for that tour to be seen. And I think it's buried here.
Right. That was very interesting. Thank you very much for the stories that you gave.
And thank you for asking me the right questions and the patience to listen to me.